So this video is going to be an interesting one, especially considering the current circumstances. There's a certain massive show that's stealing all the limelight that I have very strong feelings about, mainly in it being overrated and not a very good adaptation of a certain video game. But I'm saving that for later. For now, I want to recommend you guys a show that I just recently fell in love with. It's an unconventional one, but I hope to get more people talking about this, because I won't lie, I think this show is downright a masterpiece, made by our good friends Down Under, so prepare for funny accents.
Ray, how many people, if you had to guess, how many people would you say that you've assaulted? My problem.
He said, go get your Bibles and put them in my house. Tear down your castles in the sand. Then come with your daddy to the cotton patch and get a little dirt on your hands.
Heaps.
That's right, Mr. Inbetween. Now, this is a show that has some very interesting history behind it. You see, Mr. Inbetween is the crime drama dark comedy series created by and starring Scott Ryan. It follows the daily life of a professional hitman living in Australia, Ray Shootist. He tries to balance his daily life as a violent criminal with his responsibilities as a father, a boyfriend, and keeping true to a sort of code of honor that he believes in, which becomes difficult as he runs into all kinds of different people and situations, some directly challenging his worldviews and principles. Now, some of you guys might assume that this is going to be a show kind of like Barry, which is another dark comedy series about a hitman, but this is actually a completely different beast. You see, Barry focuses on how his life spirals out of control and has building tension throughout each season. There's a lot of cause and effect, and each episode builds up to something larger. Mr. Inbetween is really more the opposite. I'll explain more towards the end, but a better comparison for the series would be Louie, funny enough, a show following a fictionalized account of Louis C.K.'s life, and sort of depicts how he gets ideas for his stand-up routines. It's a slice-of-lifestyle formula with only a few elements really being plot points. Mr. Inbetween is essentially if you took that Louie formula, but applied it to a hitman. It sounds weird, but that's the thing. It works. It works really well. In fact, I'll just outright say it. Mr. Inbetween is a fantastic series, downright a masterpiece, I'd say, with one of the most fascinating and likable protagonists that I've seen in a show. So let's dig in and talk about why I love this so much. I mentioned before that this series is more of a slice of life where you really get small-scale stories in each episode, and these can vary from Ray performing a job to just trying to figure out why his daughter doesn't want him to drive her to school anymore. This is actually something that was carried over from the source material, since yes, this is actually an adaptation of something. Or I guess it would be more accurate to say it's a spin-off. Back in 2005, there was a small indie film made in Australia called The Magician. It was a crime drama, comedy, found footage movie about an indie filmmaker following a hitman to document his daily life. It was a series of moments and misadventures that weren't really tied together too much. I mean, it had a hostage situation where Ray is conflicted on whether or not he wants to kill somebody, Max, the filmmaker, interviewing Ray and trying to find out more about his life and philosophy, and just assorted scenes of Ray going around beating the shit out of people. It wasn't really a structured story, and it was intentionally like that. It was really meant to be like a cheap documentary thrown together by an amateur filmmaker hoping for a quick buck. They even outright state it in the film. Well, the movie itself started off as a 30-minute short, basically just a proof of concept. Scott Ryan, the lead actor, edited the short together with the intention of pitching it to film festivals. Well, at one of them, the brother to Joel Egerton, Nash Egerton, happened to watch it. He loved it so much that he rallied to get the film funded through government grants, and even became the director to every episode of Mr. Inbetween. And you can definitely feel a lot of the DNA from the movie in the show, from the emphasis on naturalistic dialogue, to violence that focuses more on reality than spectacle, to just how Scott Ryan plays Ray. I highly recommend The Magician, especially if you're a fan of the show. It's a different experience, but it's good to see sort of the first draft of what Mr. Inbetween eventually became, and it kind of shows what he can accomplish with not a lot of money. Louis, Doug. Regardless, The Magician was later adapted into Mr. Inbetween back in 2018, and it lasted for 3 seasons. Now you might think that sounds low, especially compared to how shows like Game of Thrones or Walking Dead went on, but this wasn't cancelled, if that's what you're worried about. The creators all agreed to end the show at 3 seasons, which actually makes this a pretty fast series to get through if you want to sit down and binge it. Hell, the first season alone is only like 6 episodes. Yeah, it's not a lot, and each episode's only about half an hour long. This is sort of a result of the slice of life style that I talked about. Each episode is meant to be a self-contained story with the plot being resolved by the end. It's almost like a sitcom, but one that has violent murder in it. Fuck you! Now, of course, you'll appreciate some of the later episodes way more if you watch since the beginning, especially towards the end, when certain character arcs come to a head, and it's time to cash in on the emotional weight. The finale of Season 2 in particular hit pretty fucking hard. But this is actually something I really like with Mr. Inbetween. While you could watch each episode independently and skip around, I'd argue you get a lot more out of the show watching in order. Not because it has some secret plot you need to decipher, no, it's nothing like that. More that each episode serves to show you more about who Ray is as a person. The show does a great job at giving its characters layers. From Ray's perverted best friend Gary, who's introduced as basically just a dumb fuck Ray has to do favors for and get him out of trouble, but he's eventually revealed to actually be a pretty legit criminal himself, even helping Ray out on jobs and being able to hold his own weight. I mean, the guy is dumb, but he's not fucking stupid. You also have Ray's brother, who is one of the most sympathetic characters in the entire show, since he's just a good guy trying to look out for his brother and his niece while suffering with worsening MND, which is a major neurological disorder. Each episode gives you more hints to who they are as individuals and how they view life. Gary just seems to enjoy the little things: sports, guns, porn, stuff like that. Bruce, Ray's brother, sees the good in life. Even with his situation, he wants to be there as a form of stability for Ray and Brittany, his niece. Freddie, the crime boss that Gary and Ray work with, has trouble separating family from business, and this causes issues when the two worlds conflict, putting him in more than a few no-win situations. You get the point. These are just a handful of the characters in the series, but the real standout is Ray himself. This is a very complicated guy. You might think he's just a cold-blooded murderer, a sociopath taking his anger out on the world and fucking his life up one step at a time. Well, that's actually wrong. While he does screw his life up on more than a few occasions, Ray himself is actually a lot more level-headed than you might expect, especially compared to other protagonists in crime dramas. In something like Barry or Breaking Bad, you see a real lack of control in their protagonists, or some major flaw that you can point to as something that makes them directly evil. Barry has anger issues that cause him to lash out, sometimes in downright homicidal fashion, which creates a snowball effect he can't handle. Walter White is motivated by pride. He makes short-sighted and downright stupid decisions, all to, ironically, feel like the smartest guy in the room. Tony Soprano is a hypocrite, going on about loyalty and protecting the family, all while screwing people over and only really caring about himself, even outright killing the ones that looked up to him and were loyal. Meanwhile, Ray is almost a mirror to these guys. When the show starts off, Ray is clearly meant to be a villain protagonist. He hurts people for money. He's a hitman. First episode has him threaten to murder a guy's family because of a debt he refuses to pay.
Well, it's not my job to collect money, it's his job.
What's your job?
My job's to make you sorry you didn't pay when you had the chance.
But as the show goes on, you actually become more sympathetic to Ray. You learn more about his circumstances, his family life, and most importantly, the unspoken code that he seems to stick to. I wouldn't necessarily say that Ray is glorified. He has more than a few occasions where he just flat out screws up or is the bad guy. It's more that you understand he's not a two-dimensional villain. The character feels inspired by Mark Chopper Reed, a notorious pop culture figure in Australia who became a weird folk hero-style character due to his apparent code of honor that he would stick to, essentially promising that he would only be violent towards criminals and people trying to provoke conflict first. Despite basically just being a thug who went in and out of prison, he gained a cult following and even appeared in Australian media. He got a dedicated movie, comedians would reference him from time to time, and there was even a domestic violence awareness commercial that aired that was literally just him threatening to beat the shit out of wife beaters.
If you come to jail for bashing a woman or raping a woman, you will get dealt with. You will suffer. We will break your neck, you low, gutless, weak mice.
Not gonna lie, kinda based. Ray definitely has flashes of a similar idea, a criminal with rules, but it's nothing that's explicitly laid out or talked about. You just sort of pick up on it as the show goes on. Ray is willing to do a lot of different kinds of work, from drug deals to raids to simply kidnapping a guy and killing him in the woods. All you have to do is be honest and straightforward with him. Why do you want this guy dead? Hell, he's even willing to kill people he knew for years. You just gotta make sure to pay him what you fucking owe. As long as you don't try to bullshit the guy or screw him over, Ray is your man. He's a professional. But if you do think it's a good idea to try to give him the runaround, you find out the hard way that was a mistake. And if you happen to screw over somebody he liked, there isn't really much you can do. He'll come at you like the wrath of God himself. This is an element to the character I especially find interesting. The way Ray views violence and hurting people. Most every show that handles criminal violence tends to show the psychological damage a life like this can have on a person. The guilt over killing, the stress of always looking behind your shoulder, not being able to balance being in the day with normal people, with the nightlife of being a criminal, stuff like that. Mr. Inbetween doesn't really do this, at least with the major characters. None of the protagonists have any qualms with killing. In fact, the times where they are acting out of anger are the exceptions, to the point that you are legitimately afraid of what they're capable of if they really meant it. But instead, you get insights to exactly how Ray views life as a hitman. It's a job. He views it in the exact same way he views his cover job as a bouncer. It's just something he does for money. He's very good at killing people, so why not use that skill set to make a living? To Ray, there isn't really anything to feel about it. It's work. He's just semi-skilled labor contracted out to take care of something. It's to the point that he even extends this to some characters who outright try to kill him. He knows it's just the rules of the game. Everyone has their time to shoot at somebody or get shot at.
Sorry about that beating, mate. There's nothing personal.
Don't worry about it.
Of course, this doesn't mean that he'll just forgive and forget if you take a shot at him. In fact, that would be an extremely bad idea. The guy is a very talented assassin, capable of making people disappear off the face of the earth. By the way, the action in this series is fantastic. There's an attention to detail to the gunfights. Everything from how the actors move to the sound design really grounds it all in reality. One of the best shootouts in the show is when Ray ambushes a van with an SMG, a 10 to be exact. You can hear the bullets punching through the doors and the windows. There's actual differences between what it impacts, from metal punching through metal to how it sounds when it breaks through glass. It even goes so far as to show how quick Ray burns through ammo, only getting a few seconds to spray bullets before having to reload. The friend who recommended the show to me said that it's some of the most accurate gunfights he's seen on TV. I'm not sure about that, I can't really be the judge there, but they were certainly fun as hell to watch, even if they don't happen every episode. But some of my favorite moments of the show are just when people really challenge Ray, ask why he hurt somebody, or try to decipher how he views life. Mainly because it's these moments that you see how little they actually understand the guy. The anger management class in particular really shows the divide between how most would perceive Ray and how he actually thinks. The guy is genuinely insulted at being put in the same group as people who beat their wives or their kids.
Well, no offense, but I don't really want to sit here with a bunch of fucking wife bashers and child beaters, you know what I mean?
And yeah, he's got a point. He doesn't do that. In fact, he's a pretty good father to his daughter. Even has a decent relationship with his ex-wife. It's not the best, but they're divorced, so you know. Just the fact that they aren't trying to kill each other is more than enough. But Ray views himself as different from low-end scumbags. In fact, he specifically believes that he's got a role in society to set these guys straight. When someone accosts him on the street, he'll break their jaw, so that next time, if they ever get the same idea again, they'll think twice about it. They'll remember the beating Ray gave them. That's not to say that Ray is a vigilante or Punisher-style character. Not at all. The guy is absolutely a criminal. This is just how he justifies beating the ever-loving shit out of a guy that knocked his daughter's ice cream out of her hand. Which, yeah, is reasonable. All you had to do was apologize, man. It didn't have to be this way. And really, this sort of describes Ray's philosophy to a T. He views violence as just a means to an end, an obstacle to overcome, to get to a result we all knew was inevitable anyway. Hell, there are times where you, the viewer, are asking yourself why a guy put himself into a position to get an ass beating. We all know you were going to pay the money. Why cause more pain for yourself? Or in other situations, why are you being such a dick? You are literally asking to get the fucking shit kicked out of you. Why did you need to take the unicorn? Now, the humor in Mr. Inbetween is something that I've neglected to talk about. Just know that it's a pretty damn funny show. This is one of those cases where it's able to balance harrowing drama with being legitimately hilarious. You can go from a scene of Ray torturing somebody to him having to take the fall for his buddy's porn collection as a favor. There's also a lot of scenes where characters are just sitting around having bullshit conversations, talking about aliens, the existence of God, what gender they'd want their first kid to be, and every single one sounds extremely authentic to how people speak. There's a good flow to the dialogue, and there is a lot of Aussie slang mixed in. You'll learn to understand what dimmies are, and the timing for the jokes is on point. It's not as absurd as how Barry can get, instead it's a lot more dry. It's more grounded in how people really would talk, and just the absurd situations of normal life. Of course, there are moments where the humor can get downright over the top, but never in a way that I'd say breaks the reality of the series. Simply a completely insane situation that relies on 1 in a million chances, which is the entire joke. Nobody could have ever predicted that coming. Another thing I will say is that this is one of those rare cases in a series where it's able to have great humor and great drama without ever feeling the need to dumb anything down for the audience. There was never a point where it felt like the script cheated or had to invent a reason for something to happen. It's very tight with each episode, and it's only really small detail stuff that can get left by the wayside. Like, for one, if you spray a whole canister of gasoline inside of a small building, then the minute you ignite it, the whole building will fucking explode, because the gas will evaporate and become vapor, like, instantly. But we can excuse it and say it was an accelerant that had a higher boiling point. It's not really the point of the scene. Also, there's a scene where Ray's daughter fires a gun inside the house, and it's one of those weird cases where nobody else in the neighborhood heard it, and Brittany herself isn't clutching her head in pain because a gunshot in a small room like that would have her ears fucking ringing. Guns are very, very loud. But as stated, this is small detail stuff that doesn't impact the show at large, and frankly, there are far worse sins out there. These are just weird quirks that you can easily forget about for the larger picture, and the times it does know how to make violence grounded are downright glorious. Plus, they happen way more often. Like, there's a gunfight where Ray and his friends ambush some guys who tried to stiff them on a deal. Well, when Ray notices that a guy is wearing a bulletproof vest, Ray aims for his shoulder, since that area is exposed. And this is probably one of the few shows that actually does address that if you get hit in the shoulder, you're gonna bleed out pretty fucking fast, since that does happen to characters. It's like the only time I've ever actually seen anyone address that. There are arteries in your shoulder. If you get hit in the shoulder, you will fucking bleed and you'll die. So, you know, good on Mr. Inbetween for actually doing that. But you get my point. He's able to make split-second decisions in the heat of the moment. And these small little shifts help you understand that Ray was basically born to be a hitman. The guy found his purpose in life, and he is damn good at it. Now, the actual end of the series can feel a tad rushed to some. It covers territory that some might argue needs 2 episodes instead of just 1. The final gunfight is great. It's one of the best in the show. But the wrap-up for the episode sort of rushes through some serious character development. I didn't hate it. It's just one of those cases where just one more episode would have made it stick the landing perfect. The finale doesn't suck, not at all, but you can be left feeling a little disappointed, like, that's it? It's over for good? Though I'd argue that the show is more about the experience of watching it than the destination. It's like arguing that Seinfeld's finale sucked. You're kinda missing the point.
I was in the pool! I was in the pool!
You're not wrong, but you're not really watching to get to the finale. It's how each episode makes you feel and the journey at large. Still, I absolutely loved Mr. Inbetween. It's outright one of the best crime shows I've seen in a long time. It's definitely different from something like Better Call Saul, but I'll argue it does more than enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with the greats. I'm actually kinda sad that it took this long for me to pick up the show, but it was sorta buried. It did air in America, it's not like it was stuck in Australia. It's just that it never picked up a substantial enough following to really be talked about. Hell, it's only just recently that I'm seeing discussion pop up for the show, and I hope that this video managed to convince you guys to sit down and give it a watch. It's fantastic, with some episodes that will stick with you for a long time. My personal favorites are On Behalf of Society, Monsters, See You in Your Dreams, Socks Are Important, and Their Rust and Let Me Die. These episodes are downright greatest of all time level stuff. Not even saying the other episodes are bad, just that these are the ones that stuck with me the most. You might have your own list of favorite episodes. Regardless, I hope you guys check out this series. Watch the movie too, The Magician. It's a lot of fun, even if it's a different experience than the show. Still, it's time to wrap things up here. You can find this series on Hulu or your pirate site of choice, and I hope you guys give it some love. Until next time, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys.
Run.
Hey, loser, do you want a shirt? Do you want a t-shirt? I have shirts now. Look in the description for a link to a t-shirt you can buy. If you don't buy the t-shirt, I'll kill your family. If you don't buy the t-shirt, I'll poison your dog. If you don't buy the t-shirt, you're going to be the only person in town that does not have a t-shirt. Everyone's going to look at you funny. There's going to be social consequences to not having one of these t-shirts. I'm now making express threats of violence against you if you do not buy my t-shirt. I will call the police, tell them how you're not buying my shirt. They're gonna plant crack in your house, and they're gonna arrest you and then beat you up in a jail cell. Buy my shirt.